Dear students, I would like to present to you two PowerPoint presentations on your online presentation. The first is just an overall outline of what you want to include in your PowerPoint presentation, and the second is a student example and how he put together the online presentation. First, please remember that you may place graphics within the presentation as necessary, which means that you can include as many graphics as you want as long as the graphics are relevant to the discussion. Remember that for your online presentation, just as for your recommendation report, the only graphics that you may use are photographs, pie charts, bar charts, anything of that nature. However, you're not going to include caricatures or clip art. This is a professional presentation and recommendation report. Therefore, you should not have any amateur or cartoonish looking visuals in either document. The first screen that you're going to have for your PowerPoint presentation is an attention getter. And your attention getter can come into three forms. It can be a question, a quote, a statement, and your job is to reveal more information about that question, quote, or statement. You can also add an attention getter in there, and that can be a narration, but this can be very difficult for an online presentation because you don't want your audience to read the narrative. So if the narrative is very long, you probably want to omit it. However, for those of you who are well versed in PowerPoint and you want to add sound to your presentation, you can by all means do that. And if you do that, well, then you can tell your audience through sound, through audio, the narration. And of course, the question, the quote, the statement has to be relevant to your discussion. And I will post more information on the attention getter. I'll post that information on the bulletin board. The next screen can consist of the company logo, the company name, and of course your name and the title of your presentation as well. The next screen will provide an overview for your audience, and you want to list the main points of the body of your presentation, so you can list them as point 1, point 2, point 3. And remember that you don't want to, your job here is not to transfer the entire recommendation report onto PowerPoint. You're going to choose specific information that you want your audience to learn about your recommendation report. That's the sole purpose of this, so that you can give your audience an idea of your subject, your audience, your recommendation, not for your audience to read every single word of your recommendation report. Only I will have the privilege of doing that, of reading every word of your recommendation report. For your points, point 1, point 2, and point 3, you can divide those points into 3 sub-points, and this information can appear on the next screen. And next you would move to point 2 and divide point 2 into its 3 sub-points. And then you move on to point 3, once again divide this point into its 3 sub-points. And once you've done that, you will conclude your presentation. And of course, for your conclusion, you can summarize the main points that you made in major point 1, 2, and 3. You can also refer back to your attention getter. So you can answer that question that you posed. You can refer to that statement. You can refer to that quote. You can explain how it's relevant. If you told a story, you can explain how that story works for your recommendation. So in other words, what you're doing in the conclusion is that you're bringing your attention getter full circle. and you can restate your main points also on a screen, and your last screen can be your references screen. And make sure that when you provide information that comes from another source for your presentation, make sure that you write something like according to, or Dr. Smith states, or Executive Smith states, and include what he or she states, or according to what that person or that group states. That way you are giving citations to your sources. You want to make sure that you do that in the presentation. Of course, you're going to do that in the report itself. You're going to have those in-text parenthetical citations in the report, and then your references page in the report. But for your presentation, you're going to have those introductory phrases so that your audience knows what information you are citing, and then the last screen can be your your references page. So that is the overall outline of the presentation. And next, I would like to show you a presentation of a recommendation report from a student. And this is the student's attention getter. So first he poses questions to his audience. Next he moves on to provide the name of his presentation, kind of the purpose of his presentation, his name and the date. And he moves on to his overview. So these are the questions that he's going to answer, and he's to some degree carrying his attention getter throughout the presentation. And he's hitting on some of the main subjects that he discussed in the recommendation report. He's giving his audience a feel for the points that he raised in the recommendation report. So hopefully you can, I can post this on the bulletin board, by the way, and when you look through this, you can get a feel for what his recommendation report is about and what he's recommending. And this template, by the way, is a template that appears in PowerPoint. You can use any of those templates, or you can begin with a blank screen and come up with your own design. Just remember the rules of screen design. We discussed this back when you put together your web page. Remember that it's always best to have a light background and dark text. Of course, one area that all of you will include will be your recommendation. So I expect to see that on all presentations. However, just based on the information that you want to give to your audience, based on your subject, that's all going to be determined by you as far as what additional information you want to include. So for example, for some of you, you may think that your scope is very important, whereas others you will not think that's important. So you may, instead of including your scope, you would include your methodology. Whereas others of you may not think your methodology is important, so you would include other information. So all that is totally up to you, but everyone will have the recommendation, because after all, this is a recommendation report, and your recommendation is very important. And remember to include that references page on your presentation. You're going to post your presentation 2 places. The first, of course, is the assignment Dropbox so that I can take a look at it and grade it. And you're also going to post it on the bulletin board so that your cybermates can take a look at your presentation and hopefully make comments to it. If you have questions about your presentation, of course, you can contact me, but I hope that these 2 PowerPoint presentations will give you some information as far as how to put it together and what you want to think about. Have fun putting it together, and I look forward to viewing your presentation next week.